This presentation delves into the challenges faced by Europe's green industrial policies as it tries to achieve ambitious environmental goals, such as becoming carbon neutral by 2050. It explores the policy's interaction with the US Inflation Reduction Act, Europe's effort to foster green technologies, and the broader global race for clean energy innovation. The discussion also highlights the complexities of balancing climate goals with economic growth while addressing the socio-economic impact of the green transition. Hello everyone, welcome to this series based around students' exceptional work. This year, the Norwich Economic Publication has the wish to promote as much as possible exceptional work from students who did an outstanding job for the assessment. Today, we're focusing on work from students in the module Regional Economic Integration, led by Liliana Harding. The presentations on Europe's green industrial policies is at the same time well written and well researched. An insightful presentation made by students interested and interesting. Now, we're pleased to hand over the spotlight to this remarkable work. Thank you.
Hi everyone, today with Ben, Sonita, Josh and Jack, we will present an article on the European Green Industrial Policy and its challenges. So, the article we present is extracted from a book titled Sparkling Europe, New Industrial Revolution, a Policy for Net Zero Growth and Resilience, published in July 2023. The authors of this chapter are all part of Bruegel, which is an independent European think tank specialized in economics. This chapter was written by three authors: Simone Tragliata, who is a professor of energy, climate, environmental policy in Milan; Cecilia Tracy, who is a research analyst; and Reinhold Vogler, who is a professor in Belgium, whose research concentrated on industrial organization, international economics and strategy, innovation, and science. In a first time, Jack and I will introduce the article and define some concepts. Then Josh will state the status of the European Green Industrial Policy today. And then Sonita will look further into how is designed to design a better green industrial policy and into the Inflation Reduction Act and the direction of Europe to it. Finally, Ben will argue on green tech and conclude our presentation. So, you might have already heard about the European Green Deal. It is a set of policy initiative adopted in 2020 by the European Commission, which aims at making the EU the first carbon-free zone by 2050. If you want to know more about it, you can go to the website of the European Commission that details all the objectives and the outline to achieve them. For several decades now, scientists have warned about climate change. But now it's time is counted, which makes the transition toward greener economies even more urgent. The European Commission has set the first deadline for 2030, where the greenhouse emissions should be reduced by 55% compared to the level of emission in 1990. This is where industrial policy comes into place. The European economic growth today relies largely on sectors with high carbon emissions, such as the automobile industry, which account for roughly 7% of the total EU growth. Decarbonization of the industry is therefore a necessity to achieve this objective. If they want to remove all the carbon emissions, they will have to restructure those sectors at strong emissions. This will come with a great challenge of tackling socio-economic issues that this transition will create. But those internal issues are confronted in the global geo-economic context today. The US has launched its Inflation Reduction Act, which provides huge subsidies to clean industries. The EU wants to be the first carbon-free, but this act causes a fear of loss of investment into the European Union. We will see further into the presentation how the EU reacts to this international race toward green transition.
Hi, my name is Jack, and I'll be introducing and explaining some of the key concepts from this topic. First is industrial policy. An industrial policy refers to the strategic approach adopted by a country's government to promote and shape economic development within specific sectors. Unlike broader economic policies, industrial policies specifically target industries, aiming to enhance their competitiveness, encourage innovation, and promote growth. Europe is using industrial policy to transition to a green economy, focusing on decarbonisation and clean technology while ensuring socio-economic sustainability. The policy aims to balance climate targets with economic growth, leveraging innovation and public-private partnerships to address the challenges of global warming and societal transformation. Climate policy versus green industrial policy. Climate policy generally refers to the strategic approach and actions taken by governments or organisations to address and mitigate the effects of climate change. This includes measures such as setting emissions targets, implementing carbon pricing, and promoting renewable energy resources. It's a broad framework aimed at reducing greenhouse gas emissions and limiting global warming. Green industrial policy, on the other hand, is more focused on the economic aspects of transitioning to a low-carbon economy. It involves government-led initiatives that support industries in becoming more sustainable, such as investing in green technologies, providing subsidies for a clean energy, and creating jobs in the environmental sector. It's about aligning economic development with environmental sustainability. The Inflation Reduction Act. The Inflation Reduction Act was adopted by the United States in August 2022 and is an important policy aimed at reducing inflation through significant investment in climate and energy initiatives. It provides substantial funds for renewable energy, aiming to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and boost energy security. It has been a significant catalyst for Europe's focus on the green industrial policy. It sparked concerns about the potential relocation of Europe's clean tech industries to the US, lured by the IRA's combination of subsidies and protectionist local content requirements. The IRA's influence is part of a broader geo-economic context that challenges Europe to maintain its position in the global race for clean technologies and to capitalise on the industrial growth opportunities presented by the green transition.
Hi, I'm Josh. I'll be discussing the current status of green industrial policy in Europe. First off, we have Horizon Europe. Horizon Europe is the successor to the EU's previous Horizon 2020. It's based the idea of university and other researchers being given funding for projects that relate to the EU's current goals. These are not always green policy, but the EU Commission made an announcement saying it would prioritise green policy because of the current 50-55 target in 2030. The budget is given as 95.5 billion euros. Since the Commission's last update, end of 2022, for 2023, they promised 970 million euros on ending fossil fuel dependency, and they were willing to go up 13.5 billion euros towards training and researchers. However, they have only spent 12% of their budget so far, and they're roughly 12 billion euros under what they promised in the first 2 years. Now it's the EU Innovation Fund. The EU Innovation Fund basically gathers money through auctions and other things. They've currently got roughly 40 billion euros to spend, and they spend this on small projects which are related to obviously EU things. Currently, as of recently, or the 2 years, the 70 projects were requested and 49 were accepted, with the rest either being rejected or currently going through planning. The Industrial Alliance is basically just like an organisation way where the private and public sector can work together to achieve the obviously goals of green policy. And there's like multiple alliances. There's like 9 or 10 different alliances. They have come under criticism and recently by a group called Friends of Earth Europe, as they suspected they fell victim to capture. Capture. As they did not see a reduction from specifically the raw materials and the clean carbon alliances that they were reducing fossil fuels. This relates to the theory that will be mentioned later, specifically Roderick's collaboration theory, where this would basically go against it because it states that all 3 sectors have to work together. And this is an example of government and the private sector only working together, which will harm future sustainability and greenhouse. Next, please. The IPC's important projects, the European Commission. This is where they set out a roadmap of what countries will be involved in separate years and what every country is working on. So basically, projects will into obviously greener emissions and it also allows them to use cross-border trade to achieve their goals. And this roadmap was quite helpful to see what their goals were at the time. I think the most recent things, you can only currently get data from early days of the stuff that's built. The more recent stuff is a bit harder to find. It's not completed, it's just started. And finally, we move on to the EU Investment Bank. The EU Investment Bank is basically where they get most of their money for stuff like this. Currently, it's set aside $1 trillion for projects related to greenhouse from 2021 to 2030. The big thing is the EU's RE-Power EU Plus package, which has rose to 45 billion euros. It was approved at 30 billion euros. The idea basically is to counteract, because obviously they lost the Russian pipeline, so they're trying to counteract that whilst keeping energy costs low, and at the same time hoping to eventually progress into more cleaner energy, but they obviously need to currently keep costs down for everyone. And their goals mainly are to achieve net zero targets with this, and obviously innovate and growth, which is the whole idea. Now we're going to move on to
when we look further into the article, here's a few things that we want to focus on. One is the argument between the Inflation Reduction Act and the Green Deal Industrial Plan, as well as digital technology, and how to design a better green policy. So, as mentioned by my team earlier, the Inflation Reduction Act was signed by President Biden in August of 2022, and despite its name, the Inflation Reduction Act is one of the biggest green policy that the U.S. ever signed. It planned to invest about $365 billion into renewable energy and clean technology for consumer and for firm. The key term here is that they use the word about, because the distribution of the fund of this bill consists of subsidies as well as tax break. So, for example, if a firm that focuses on green technology can get funding they can get funding by tax break, but that means there's no maximum in terms of subsidy. So the more firms that enter or expand within the U.S. that fit the IRA criteria, the larger the number get, and that means there's no limit on this budget. So this proposed a problem for the EU because this comes with a topic of the market competition. The US is providing aid to companies that focus on green industry, and the EU can't do that because the EU are not a physical policy union. Therefore, they can't make physical budgeting. So that means any topic that relating to tax reduction or tax break, they can't do that. So they can't provide the same subsidy as the US does. Therefore, the EU proposed four main plans to combat or an adjustment to the US IRA Act, which include the Net Zero Industry Act, the European Sovereignty Fund, and education and skill for across European countries, as well as trade agenda with high resource nations, just to increase the resource within the country. And so as you can see on the graph on the right, so with the Inflation Reduction Act, we can see that based on the US Treasury statistic, they found that within the 1 year in which the Inflation Reduction Act had been in effect, there have been a double in the amount of firms that utilize the resources, well, in terms of tax break, which kind of showcase how beneficial and how it is expanding the US economy in terms of green technology. And that is definitely a concern for the EU. Yeah. And I'm going to hand this over to Ben.
Hiya, my name's Ben, and today I'm going to be talking about digital technologies. So the gravity of importance for a solid green policy for the EU is heightened by the position of the global race for technology. While the EU has been a strong advocate for sustainability, setting optimistic climate goals such as reducing their net greenhouse gas emissions by at least 55% by 2030, however, the EU is unable to keep up a competitive advantage in the market for digital technology. When comparing to US and China, which will help slow the transition into green technology. This connection between digital innovation and green policy is of severe importance for the following reasons. Dual leadership goals. The EU strives to advocate further leadership in green and digital technology. However, due to them lagging behind in the technological race compared to China and the US, they could ultimately fall behind when producing green technology. As stated, Europe invests a lot of research and publishes many patents, but it fails to compete with the US and China when it comes to translating its innovation efforts to large global technology firms. The 7 largest in the US tech companies, such as Google, Amazon, Apple, Microsoft, are 20 times bigger than the EU 7 largest and generate more than 10 times more revenue. Digital technologies are essential in developing a carbon neutral world, such as precision agriculture, smart energy grids, and efficient management and allocation of resources. Also, economic competitiveness. Global economics are largely in the modern day defined by their advancements in technology. The EU's economic competition depends on its capability to innovate its digital technologies, not only for economic gain, but for a smoother switch to green energy. And talking about green energy, the EU has very, very optimistic energy goals. This is why it's so important. If you look at the graph here, between 2018, there was a reduction in carbon emissions in 25%. That took them 18 years. And as stated in 2021, they want to reduce it by another 55%. And that's basically doing double the amount in half the time. And it just seems very optimistic right now. The modern technology that they would have to innovate can do a plethora of things, such as optimize energy use and reduce emissions. However, Europe is already lagging behind Asia and US in the global race for technologies. It cannot afford to give up its place for the global race of clean technologies and miss out on the industrial growth opportunities from the green transition, which is already suffering multiple pushbacks, one of them being Italy, as they were saying that the EU needs to rewrite their plans to phase out combustion engine cars. Now, next, I'll be handing over back to Sanjata.
Thank you. Do not forget to unmute this time. And so the following argument is by Roderick. So this is going to be about how we can look further how we can design a better green policy. So Roger proposed a collaborative argument in which the government, the private sector, as well as civil society can work collaboratively in a somewhat of a check and balance social system to lead us toward a greener, to improve the green policy. So that means company and government and the civil society have to co-finance project, and that means they would have to, instead of just focusing on just one team producing providing the funding for a project, they have to work together, and at the same time they have to take risk into a policy. That means invest in project that they don't even know if it's going to be successful, or invest in project that they already know that it's going to be successful, because he proposed that it is important to learn from this mistake in order to make the green policy better. Now, this plan of his require countries to be in preferential agreement with each other in order for it to be successful, because it requires a lot of trust within between nations, because without those trusts, without country agreeing that they won't compete against each other or try to expand their market over another country market, there will be a major unbalance between countries, and that means it requires accountability and balance that of incentive and penalty conducted by the EU or by local government, and this will allow for a measurable and a well-communicated target, which is essential in order for his collaborative argument to be successful. Now, there's a few dilemmas, which his argument is definitely a bit more optimistic, because it does require a lot of social rule, which require a lot of people to be involved in this, and that is something that I fail to see happening. And to conclude this whole project, I'm going to hand it back to Ben.
All right. In conclusion, due to the points that we've previously stated, such as the US with their Inflation Reduction Act, as well as their increase in technological advancement, compared to the EU, who are suffering pushbacks even from the EU Parliament itself, as recently they have allowed the introduction of megatrucks, which produce even more carbon emissions than before. Therefore, we think it's safe to say that the EU's environmental goals are quite ambitious. But thank you for listening to our presentation, and have a nice day.